Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Well, it's your lucky day because I'm a good kisser.
Joe Giammatteo.
Gentlemen, the line that we've been waiting to hear for months now. Well, Crush, you can take your place in the unemployment line. You're fired.
And I just came again.
Day and night.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on June 9th, 1997. This Raw was recorded at the Hartford Civic Center, home of the Whale, in Hartford, Connecticut, and features Vince McMahon and Jim Ross on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. The first thing we heard tonight, besides the pyro, was Vince McMahon, and there's my lowlight. That was followed by What a Rush, which was a drastic improvement. But then that was followed by What a Rush Indeed, which became my new lowlight. Just kidding. There's plenty of time for more lowlights here in the episode. And I realized that we were going to find out how low Vince could take it tonight as we went into our first match of the night. Ahmed Johnson and the Legion of Doom defeats the Nation of Domination, in this case Crush, Farouk, and Savio Vega, by pinfall in 5 minutes and 30 seconds in a 6-man tag match. I hate to say it, but I thought the litter box was going to be spotless by the end of this episode based on this opening match. I noticed in the Nation's entrance video up on the screen, though, only 2 people it actually focuses on, and those are Farouk and D'Lo. The camera either was cutting away or just not giving us the right angle. I didn't see any other faces highlighted there, and I got hopeful. And that was while commentary was discussing the problems within the Nation, and Crush and Savio were there. They did not give the Nation salute, or were a little apathetic about it, in Savio's case, which was a little irritating to Farouk by the looks of things there. Within 2 seconds of this match starting, there was a strong LOD chant going, and that pretty much dominated the sound of this at the beginning, up until we got JR saying about Crush, yes, he's got a criminal record. I loved it. As much as I am not a fan of the 6-man format, the crowd was, apparently. They were pretty hot for this. Vince at one point said that The Undertaker got goozle after goozle after goozle, in reference to The Undertaker's championship match at the King of the Ring last night.
What does that mean?
I've got no clue.
Yeah.
That is an old school term for getting screwed. So if somebody gets screwed, you say they got the goozle.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't really get screwed.
Yeah. I mean, this is Vince McMahon.
Yeah. Consider the source.
He got, I don't know, the word for it would be his lifeless body was, disrespected.
Yeah.
It was goozled, if you would.
Last night, Shawn Michaels goozled me.
He gave me a goozle, if you would.
In the match, I felt so bad for Farouk having to work with Ahmed here. That did not look fun at all. But that power slam from Animal on Farouk, that was fucking poetic. Animal floated Farouk over like a feather. Like, that was just poetry in motion. It was great to see.
He got goozled.
Yeah. It was great to see the Nation dissolving in this match. By the end, Crush and Savio had left Farouk in the ring to get the Pearl River Plunge from Ahmed and give the win to Ahmed. But I do have to note that by the finish, the rule book had been thrown out the window, referee Mike Chioda completely ignoring the fact that Farouk was getting triple teamed into the pin. And that was it for the show opener. Despite the obvious faults in this, we did get a lot of crowd energy, and we were one step closer to getting Crush the fuck out of here. Joe, what'd you think about how we started tonight?
Well, I didn't really like this match, and I don't have many notes about it, but I did have some thoughts while this was happening. Was this the same exact match that we had in the street fight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think either Vince or JR did point that out once.
Okay. doesn't that kind of devalue that match now? Because now they're just kind of throwing it on a Raw just for nothing.
Well, it's kind of like the last Raw we covered, you know, the one right before the pay-per-view is like we just kept on having these regurgitated pay-per-view matches.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is this is a Fallout show from King of the Ring, and didn't Ahmed just make Undertaker look like a little bitch last night? And now he's just out here in a 6-man tag match? That was kind of strange too. So the other thing is they're clearly setting up a Nation of Domination split, but it's taking too long, mostly because nobody really cares. But I guess my thoughts on that are going to change later in the episode. So that's pretty much all I had on this one.
Yeah, I mean, from the start, when you show me it's going to be a 6-man tag, you're already putting my expectations in the floor, you know? And as we just covered, this is a repeat match as well. We just saw this at, I forget which pay-per-view, but was it WrestleMania maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, WrestleMania. You know, I don't know why they decided that we needed to have this match again, but Bartlett, you pointed out, the crowd loved it. At least LOD. They loved LOD out there. I don't know if they were too crazy about Ahmed Johnson or Crush or anyone else, but they were chanting LOD the entire match. So, yeah, I guess the crowd was happy, and that's all that really matters in the end. But Crush and Animal looked especially bad together. I mean, it was mostly Crush, of course, but Johnson does a very shitty-looking scissor kick on Farouk. And then the way we end this, Farouk was just in the final main event the night before, and now he's jobbing out to Ahmed Johnson. Not too much to like about this match, but gotta say, the crowd seemed to enjoy it.
That they did. There was a ton of energy, which surprised the shit out of me. I mean, not so much with Legion of Doom, but just with the rest of it. Because it was all babyface energy, you know? Nobody was really actively booing the Nation. They were really just chanting for LOD. After that, we got the graphic up that tonight, Austin versus Pillman, that match that's been built up for quite a while now, it will be happening. We will have it on our screens, and I'm looking forward to seeing that later. As well as Psycho Sid versus Owen Hart. That was kind of a surprise to hear, but hey, I'll take it. I always love to get Owen Hart in the ring. Also, Davey Boy, the British Bulldog, will be defending the European Championship against Goldust. And we'll also be getting a word from the new 1997 King of the Ring, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, which is what we got right after a King of the Ring replay commercial. Hunter came out with Chyna to be interviewed in the ring by Vince McMahon. Chyna looked great here. She looked very much like a bodyguard while she was holding the crown for Hunter. And we got a replay with Vince narrating it. I loved Vince saying, "Chyna hit Mankind in the head with the scepter." And then the image in front of us clearly showed her hitting him in the middle of the back. Hunter cut a surprising promo here, citing last year and how Hunter should have won King of the Ring last year if it weren't for Vince McMahon's politics. And we all know that's a reference to the curtain call and the click and the punishment of Hunter Hearst Helmsley as a result of that. They didn't get into those details, but I was very surprised that it got mentioned at all. And with the exception of the flighty accent, this was, again, a very Triple H promo. The words being said, if it was just in a raspier voice, it would have been straight up Triple H. Mankind interrupted that, though, to a pretty nice crowd pop. Mankind says that he wants a rematch. Hunter's response was great. Hunter said that he loved every second of what he did to Mankind, and every time Mankind got up, Hunter was excited because he could do it again. That was a great fucking line. But then the biggest shock here, Chyna gets on the mic to invite Mankind down to the ring to kiss her ass. Mankind responds with, "It's your lucky day because I'm a good kisser," and I fucking popped. Mankind does indeed come out. Hunter and Chyna quickly knock him down and move on out of there. It was kind of anticlimactic given the build-up to it. That was followed by Doc Hendricks giving a voiceover for Sunny, dancing around in a Raw is War t-shirt. Just, that was cheap as hell to watch. Just felt cheap, dirty afterwards, kinda. After that, a video package filled with terrible quality video footage from back in February of '97 when the British Bulldog won the European Championship, which gives us the information here that the European title hasn't had any action at all in about 4 months. And that's where this ended. So, let's hear what you guys have to say about this segment. Joe, please take it first.
Well, I didn't really care for the Helmsley interview that much up until Mankind kind of saved the day for me. He's bringing up backstage politics, which was a little, I mean, nobody's going to know what that is, you know, not back then. Obviously, we know what it is now, but I feel like we would have been a little confused if we were watching this in real time. But yeah, Mankind comes and kind of saves the day. I still think we're in a time period where Helmsley needs Mankind. And it's working. I think it's making Helmsley look better. It's good chemistry for sure. Sonny modeling the shirt. Again, it's Doc doing his creepy sales pitch. He sounds like the creepy strip club announcer.
The strip club announcer. That's exactly what he sounds like.
It's so strange.
Give it up for Sonny.
Yeah. Say hello to Sonny. We don't give a shit about the European title. I mean, who even knows it still exists? That's just, again, very bizarre. They want us to care about it again, so they're showing us all of this footage of when it was, when it first came about. So, yeah, not too exciting for me here.
I didn't mind Hunter's interview, I guess, here with Vince McMahon. I do think it's kind of interesting, though, that there seems to be a pattern here that every time Goldust does something, Mick Foley or Mankind comes behind and does it better. And here, here it is with this Hunter feud, which we've been moaning about for months with Goldust, and we, you know, have new life in the Hunter character now that we have Mankind as his adversaries. So again, I hate to say it because I like Goldust. I like Dustin Reynolds. I think he is a good wrestler, but he isn't as good as Mick Foley. And Foley, right now, they seem to be following him just to show him up. I don't know. That's the only thing I could think of. And Foley does a good job here. Joe, like you pointed out, he kind of saves the segment and really helps put it over. And those interviews seem to be working because he got a pretty good response from the crowd when he showed up on the Titantron. Sable modeling the Raw shirt.
Sunny.
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
Time.
Yeah, Sonny. No, yeah, it's just the same stuff we've gotten out of Doc anymore. This is all he does. And then we get a video package to remind us that the European belt exists. So I'm glad they gave us that refresher because without it, I would have completely forgot about it. So I guess we needed it.
Yeah.
It's bad when the Slammy awards are more noticeable than an actual belt.
Well, you know, that's what I was going to say, Joe. It's the European title has been kind of buried in this mountain of gold that the Hart Foundation has. And, you know, I've been on record as saying that's a good thing. I like the visual of the Hart Foundation and all that gold everywhere, but it also kind of means that the gold that they have stops being special, you know?
Well, especially if they never defend it.
Well, yeah. That last segment takes us into our next match. The British Bulldog versus Goldust with Marlena ends in a double countout in 7 minutes and 30 seconds, with the British Bulldog retaining the WWF European Championship as a result. Goldust and Marlena are both still way too loose and happy in their entrances. I've said it before, I don't want happy, goofy Goldust. I want bizarre, mysterious Goldust, and this ain't it. The Bulldog, on the other hand, barely got an entrance at all. He had his music playing, but there was no Hart Foundation support there with him. And there wasn't much going on, up to the point where we got a close-up of Goldust selling a knee lift and groaning, "Aw, fuck!" into the camera. I love the drop-down uppercut, though. That was worked and sold really well. I'm a sucker for that. As soon as commentary brought up Dusty Rhodes, though, I was over it. Done. But then we got a pinfall. But the Bulldog's leg was up on the rope, and the referee gave a 3 count on that. We went to commercial on a cliffhanger and came back to the match back in progress. I guess the match must continue. But that must have meant it's time to sit in holds, because that's what happened while commentary chit-chatted about anything and everything else. He ended up outside, which drew the double count, and double count out, and some boos from the audience. And that's where things got even fuckier. Marlena slapped the Bulldog for attacking Goldust after the bell. The Bulldog didn't like that, so he threw Goldust into the ring and grabbed a steel chair. Marlena got in between them, and just when it looked like the Bulldog was about to crank Marlena with the steel chair, Ken Shamrock ran in and launched the Bulldog up into a body slam. And I mean launched. The Bulldog got some air on that. and Shamrock ended up driving away the Bulldog. We ended this match with the news that something completely unrelated to this match was happening somewhere else, so we broke to commercial. When I said I wanted things to be bizarre, this is not what I meant. I almost wonder if maybe referee Tim White accidentally gave the Bulldog the 3 count with his leg on the rope, and they had to call an audible after that. It's the only thing that kind of makes sense to me, because this is another one of those matches that came in 2 parts. You know, it wasn't that good, but up until that first pinfall, it mostly made sense. After that, it kind of stopped making sense up until it was time for Ken Shamrock, the defender of women, to enter the ring. So who the fuck knows? Ryan, what'd you think about the first ever European title defense here?
Well, I could only expect that next week there's going to be a better title defense against Mankind. Because this wasn't it. You know what I mean? We waited this long for the European title defense match, and it was kind of shit. The beginning of it was fine. You know, it started out pretty solid. Both these guys are good workers, but as you pointed out, everything just kind of fell apart once we had the match must continued section. And on top of just hating every time they restart a match, it just went downhill. It turned in the rest holds. Then we got this extremely stupid double count out that I didn't even feel like it was 10 seconds. I felt like they were out there like 3 seconds, and then he called a double count out. And then the stuff at the end made no sense, where Shamrock's just coming in for no reason. It was a good suplex. I mean, that suplex that he put on the Bulldog, I don't think Bulldog had a choice to sell for that or not. So that looked pretty good. But as far as the whole match went, it was kind of a disappointment, to be honest.
Well, Goldust deserves a shot at this title because he beat Crush last night. So he deserves a title shot. But I wonder if this was kind of a last-minute thing, because I feel like this was a little bit of a missed opportunity where Goldust could have maybe cut some promos saying that he wants that European title. You know, this match just kind of happened out of nowhere. So it already has really no substance to it. The foot on the rope gimmick, I feel like a lot of times maybe that is done as a test to kind of see a crowd reaction, and there was hardly any reaction at all when, you know, it appeared as though Goldust had won the match. The crowd didn't really go too crazy, so maybe they'll use that for future reference. I thought the stuff after the match was actually pretty good. I think that, I mean, yeah, it was totally random. Like, why is Shamrock coming in there? I kind of have a reason for that later in the show when I kind of put things together. But I thought everybody did a pretty good job there. I think Marlena, as far as the acting part of it, I thought it was all pretty well done. And unlike the Ahmed Johnson bullshit from last night at King of the Ring, this makes more sense because it's a babyface helping a babyface, preventing the heel from doing heel shit, you know? Not like Ahmed Johnson going in the ring to just punk The Undertaker last night. Like,
off of a guy that he was trying to put in the hospital just a couple months ago.
Yes. Yes. So this, to me, made a little bit more sense, and it gets Ken Shamrock involved in something else that is no longer a feud with Vader.
Yes, good point there.
That's always a good thing.
We'll wait and see if the future holds a better opponent than Vader for Ken Shamrock. We'll see what happens there. I'm curious if my guesses are right, which we'll get into some of those later. Well, that news that we had at the end of that last match, the kerfuffle happening that was unrelated to this match, that was regarding the Nation of Domination. And when we came back, Doc Hendricks was on the scene at the Nation's locker room, and there was a big ruckus going on in there. Farouk ended up bursting out and said that he's heading to the ring to tell us what's up. Meanwhile, Doc stuck around to talk to Savio and Crush. Savio erupted into Spanish speaking. I didn't really, I don't speak Spanish, so I can't tell you what he said, but I felt like the gist of it might have said something. He was saying something along the lines of, like, I'm done with this. I'm going back to being like a Puerto Rican hero, maybe so I can have more strap matches. Just a guess. I did hear him say Puerto Rico in there somewhere.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Crush, on the other hand, completely shits the bed in his response to Doc, saying, don't ever come in here unless you're invited. And the Nation is just fine, he says.
I'm tired of getting goozled.
The old honey dipper. God, it was so terrible. In the ring, JR was there with Farouk, D'Lo, and the nameless ones of the Nation, as well as Clarence Mason. Farouk said that he found Savio picking jalapeno peppers in a field and brought him up. And just like after you eat a jalapeno, Savia's ass is fired. I thought that was very clever. And then the piece de resistance. Farouk moved on to Crush, highlighting that Crush was a worthless piece of shit in every way, shape, and form, and he was doing nothing and going nowhere, and that his ass is fired too.
Big pop. Everybody's highlight.
Day and night.
And I'm spent. Farouk, he then fires the nameless goons, kicks them the fuck out of the ring, and says there's only one person left that needs to go. D'Lo Brown got a real nervous look on his face, and Farouk said, "D'Lo!" And a dramatic pause. "Hold the ropes for Clarence," and I popped my fucking ass off. Farouk said that from this day forward, you're going to see a new nation. And he wants The Undertaker and Ahmed against he and D'Lo next week on Raw. Vince quickly got us away from the nation and highlighted Stone Cold Steve Austin breaking Brian Pillman's ankle. He was still promising Austin versus Pillman later on tonight. Can't wait to see that match. There's been a lot of build-up for it over a couple weeks now, and especially in this episode, so that's promising to be a good one. After that, Vince says, "And she's back. That's right, it's Sable. And there she is with the wild man Mark Marrow." And I laughed long and hard at that. Mark Marrow, the footnote to Sable's return. Marrow was there and appeared to be talking down to Sable or something, getting a little aggressive, kind of. Sable was looking very meek and mild, while Marrow was shoving a finger in her face. And not at all acting like the Marrow that we had before. He was kind of maybe acting a little bit like a woman aggressor, which does not bode well for the future based on recent experience. But then in the crowd, Paul Heyman and Tommy Dreamer started walking down the stairs to take seats in the crowd. And I was like, what? Okay. And that's where this segment ended.
Where was the show again?
Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
Not too far away from Philadelphia.
So a little north.
There was so much packed into this segment, guys. Most notably, the official end of the former Nation of Domination as we knew it, but also the on-screen return of Sable and that guy she's always dragging around behind her. Ryan, what did you think of all of this?
At the end, Crush got fired, so I thought very highly of a great deal of this segment. Farouk, I thought, did a great job in the way he kind of built up his continuing to fire people left and right here, and it just all worked, right down to the end, telling D'Lo Brown to hold the ropes for Mason as his final person that he fires, and then promising us a new nation moving forward. So that's something to really look forward to. Outside of Crush losing his job. Highlight for sure, but new and improved nation is definitely something to look forward to. Sable returning with some guy. That's not going to lead to anything good, I think we know. And then also seeing Paul Lee dangerously and Tommy Dreamer coming down, I was a little bit confused too. I mean, obviously it's another one of these ECW segments, but it seems like we've kind of forgotten about those as of late. So it kind of just popped up here out of nowhere. Yeah,
the Farouk part is really the highlight here, him basically firing everybody. It's something we've been waiting for a long time. Farouk came in with the Nation of Domination. He was the stupid gladiator thing at first, and then the Nation started at Survivor Series in November, and Farouk has been good since then, but now he's getting great.
Yeah.
Between this little feud with The Undertaker that he had, and then a lot of his interviews lately have been really great. And this was amazing. I mean, I popped like 4 or 5 times here. Telling Clarence to get to stepping. Yeah. Having D'Lo hold the ropes for Clarence. Like, what a clever way to do that. I just thought that was fantastic. And really just a guy that's getting himself over very well, even though he's been losing matches. Yeah, Sable's back. That's exciting. And Tommy Dreamer and Paul E., I think we can all agree that they have no business being here.
They do not. Ryan, you said a couple things that I thought was kind of funny. First of all, unemployment is the number one cause of criminal recidivism. Wow. So this is not good for Crush. He's going back. He's going to wind up back in the pokey after this. I just have a feeling.
Jailbird.
Here, kid, hold this sign.
And you said that Sable coming back, that's not good for anybody, least of all Mark Marrow.
No,
Ooh.
least of all.
Just this whole segment just had great little tidbits that get me very much excited for the future. Complete opposite of our next match. The Headbangers defeat Furnace and LaFawn by pinfall in 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Ryan, you wouldn't happen to have information about Furnace and LaFawn maybe being former jobbers, would you?
Yes, give me a second.
No.
I completely forgot about it until just now.
These guys were never jobbers.
You are correct, Jason. Doug Furnace and Philip LaFawn were our Jobber of the Week back on the April 28th, 1997 episode.
Not long ago.
Not
and
long
that
ago.
just shows. You just proved with your pause and hesitation. You made them into bigger jobbers
Well,
than they were at the time.
We all three completely forgot about it.
Wow.
Remember when they wanted us to care about these guys for like 2 weeks?
Yeah,
They gave up pretty quick on that.
because they were
Yeah.
sick of getting screwed.
Goozled.
Goozled. And that whole forgetting about it, they decided to just lean on it here at the beginning. Furnace and LaFawn came out to zero music, zero spectacle, other than the ring announcer announcing to the silent crowd that Furnace and LaFawn wanted to be introduced as the most exciting tag team in the WWF. So I guess that was the joke, and they decided to just go with it. The crowd exploded with an ECW chant shortly after that. Not the Headbangers, not Furnace and LaFawn, but ECW. I actually enjoyed when Phil LaFawn got technical on Thrasher there. He moved through some neat-looking holds on the mat. That was pretty cool to see. Thrasher then looked like he got paralyzed in a Hurricane Rana from Doug Furnace. That was fucking rough, and I was very happy to see him stand up out of that. And shortly after that, the Headbangers got a win after a splash reversal. Joe, I have no idea what this match was supposed to do aside from maybe just keep the Headbangers on our screens. Did you have anything on this?
I do not. No, this was not very exciting. Very poorly executed finish. And Furnace and LaFawn, I mean, these guys may have been great like 8 years ago in
Next.
Japan, but yeah, they suck. This match sucked.
Yeah. I mean, complete agreement. The match just kind of came out of nowhere and ended out of nowhere. Just reminded us why Doug Furnace and Philip LaFawn were Jobber of the Weeks not too long ago.
Who? Okay. Okay, let's keep it going.
The guys that got in a car wreck.
Well, I mean, that's like 50% of the Jobbers of the Week, I think, so far, including Bob Holly. All right, let's keep it going. Backstage with Jerry Lawler and Rob Van Dam. Lawler sounded like he had a cold or something here. We get confirmation on that. He does. His voice was trashed here. And we got footage of the night Pillman had a gun, although they don't show any of that part of it, with no mention of it at all either. Just Austin breaking through the door and the video footage ending. And further promise that we will definitely get to see Austin versus Pillman later on tonight. Next up, after that, the Sega Slam of the Week, brought to us by the greatest fighting game of all time that nobody has ever fucking heard of. That was Hunter Hearst Helmsley putting Mankind through the announce table at the King of the Ring. Looked great again. It was good to see that. That is what took us into the second hour, and Raw is War. Raw is War kicked off with the glass breaking and Stone Cold Steve Austin coming down to the ring. Vince decided that this was the time to take the high road and discuss Steve's dastardly behavior, specifically citing Austin assaulting Brian Pillman in the men's room. We got the complete replay with the Dave Hebner peeping Tom camera as part of that. I loved Austin mentioning Pillman's raspy-ass carcass. I thought that was pretty funny. Austin's looking forward to the Calgary Stampede also, and kicking the ass of every member of the Hart family. I laughed at that. Just imagining Helen Hart getting a stunner was kind of funny. After that, Vince and JR made sure to highlight some quotes from AOL, putting over the King of the Ring pay-per-view. I guess that was another chat room that they hosted. And commentary guaranteed us that Austin versus Pillman was going to happen. Again, I'm getting really, really excited to see that because they are
bait and switch.
They are really building that up in this episode. But before we get to that, well, before we move along, I should say, Joe, what did you have on our transition segment here into the second hour?
Well, it's exciting to see RVD is here again, especially after his last visit to Monday Night Raw, so that's exciting. The Sega Slam of the Week was great. The pedigree on the table. No better way to start off the second half of Raw than to have a Stone Cold Steve Austin in-ring interview, even though Vince tried to completely ruin it by just trying to get the word dastardly in there. I mean, Pillman, he's like, Vince is feeling sympathy for Brian Pillman, who is a heel who just bullied Vince McMahon like less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
So Vince tried to ruin it, but man, Austin's interviews are just so fucking good right now. He's on fire. Everything he says pops the crowd. The King of the Ring AOL comments, I thought that was pretty funny. It's almost like a little bit ahead of its time, really, because they kind of still do that with Twitter and other social media now. So I thought that was funny.
What, you mean cherry pick people's opinions on their product?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was excited to see Rod Van Dam's back. You know, I knew at some point here when he refuses to put Rockabilly over, he's going to be gone and we're not going to see him for a while again. But good to see him. Stone Cold, you know, starting this segment with Stone Cold, Joe, you pointed out, he could do no wrong right now. Everything Stone Cold says, the crowd goes crazy for. He's making fun of the Canadian Stampede. I thought that was good. You know, and JR points out that Stone Cold has become just an absolute phenomenon. And, you know, there is no other word for him because it doesn't matter what he does or says right now. The entire arena erupts and is behind him. So, you know, it can't go without saying what a special talent he is to get the crowd to react like that. The AOL chat room comments, you know, I just had to laugh because, as we all know, the internet is the most reliable source for all information.
All right, that took us into our next match. Rob Van Dam with Jerry Lawler defeats Flash Funk by pinfall in 4 minutes and 24 seconds. This match started with a dust-up between RVD and Tommy Dreamer there at ringside, with officials needing to separate it all. We broke to commercial after that. When we came back, Flash Funk was still getting undressed in the ring, so that was going to take some more time. So we moved to that commercial for the WWF. We saw this a long time ago. It showed superstars in various Olympic sports. You know, Steve Austin had a shot put, Ahmed Johnson was on a track starting position, Shawn Michaels was doing hurdles, and I guess that commercial won some kind of award. I wasn't sure what that award was, or if it was like notable at all, or if this was just more, you know, self-promotion on the WWF's part, but
the Addies or something.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before. We also went to ECW footage for all of 2 seconds to highlight Jerry Lawler's visit there. Jerry Lawler was going to join commentary with his missing voice, so that was fucking neat. I thought that was funny. The match had a lot of picture-in-picture with Jerry Lawler. It kept cutting over to Paul Heyman, so much so that it felt like the match was a side note in this bigger story of putting over ECW. Rob Van Dam kicked out of Flash's moonsault, so Flash is officially getting buried now. And the finish came and went, much like this match, because Paul Heyman and Tommy Dreamer jumped the rail and went after the King and then Rob Van Dam. That went on for a while before we ended this by cutting to commercial. I really wish I could have gotten more into this match, but that was kind of prevented by the way I felt they were trying to tell the bigger story here. I think they're correct in highlighting Rob Van Dam as an example of why people should take a more serious look at ECW. You know, there's a reason why they picked him out of everybody to be put with the King and to do this cross-promotional thing, but the way that you highlight Rob Van Dam is by watching him wrestle. He's a freak in the ring, and that will absolutely be proven when he becomes a WWF champion a few years from now. But I really felt like this was the wrong way to go about promoting it all, and I've really been looking forward to hearing what you guys thought of this. Ryan, why don't you take that first?
The actual wrestling was not bad at all. You know, Flash and Rod Van Dam, they have styles that complement each other really well. You know, they're both these high-flying guys, and when they did focus on the wrestling, it wasn't bad. At the beginning of it, I thought Lawler did a good job of saying the mandible claw by Mankind was why his voice was the way it was. That was a good way to work that in there.
Yeah.
The infection.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it did seem like this was just an afterthought. It was more to focus on Paulie and Tommy Dreamer sitting at the outside, and the match with Flash Funk didn't matter, it seemed. I thought that Van Dam's finish in the corner looked really great, though. JR tells us that it was a split leg springboard moonsault, and Vince comes back with, what a maneuver.
Jeez.
But that did look very nice. But the way it ended, I was tempted to give Flash Funk Jobber of the Week.
Ooh.
I mean, he's getting there. There's no denying it. He's going to get it. But I thought that this match had enough that I'm going to hold that in my pocket for a little bit longer. The stuff happening after the fact, it was okay, I guess. It was to build up more of this ECW buzz. But one thing I do know, ECW has no business jumping over the rail. So that was disappointing because they have no business.
So I actually have a pretty positive outlook on this whole thing because I imagined myself back in this time period where I was not really watching ECW, and I see this guy Rob Van Dam again, and my eyes are glued to the TV. If I'm watching Raw every week and this guy's on for the second time in a match, I'm going to be paying attention to what's going on. The little pull apart with Dreamer and Heyman and RVD at the beginning, I thought was good. I mean, it's telling that story, kind of getting some heat on RVD with ECW fans. That's part of this story here. I thought it was an extremely entertaining display, again, by RVD in the ring. The other thing I wanted to point out was the very good job by the referee during this match, because there were a lot of quick pins, and the referee was right on top of all of it. It was that short blonde guy. I don't know his name, but really great job on top of his shit during this match. Does this make me want to watch ECW? I say yes. I mean, if I put myself, again, in this time period, I say yes, and I think that's the whole purpose of this. So I thought this was pretty well done.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joe. I'm glad you're throwing it out there because it's hard for me to get into that mind space, because I was that fan back then that already watched ECW. I mean, this is why we're doing the podcast, because we have these views that didn't line up back then, but they're, they've changed so much over time, and looking back at this, great points, really. All right, next up, Ken Shamrock came out to that stupid fucking casino music that they're giving him right now.
By the way, that ECW music that they use for RVD, that music is still fucking awesome to this day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love hearing that.
Extreme.
Yes, but not this terrible Ken Shamrock music.
Yep. No, wait, that was Bob Holly. The other video game music. Well, Ken Shamrock's going to join commentary because I guess his commentary is going to be directly relevant to our next match. Psycho Sid defeats Owen Hart with Jim the Anvil Neidhart by pinfall in 4 minutes and 11 seconds. I think Sid is generating his own oils now. He came out dripping and pouring liquid, and it didn't stop through the whole entrance. I couldn't believe that it was still pouring after he made it the whole way down the ramp. But the crowd fucking loved him. Ken Shamrock took this time to let everyone know that he's not happy with the way that people are behaving, and he can't just sit by and let it happen. My main question once things got started here was, how good is Owen going to make Sid look? Because Sid wasn't going to do that on his own. But Owen, he's sometimes a miracle worker here, so that was what was interesting about this to me. Shamrock, on the other hand, continued to note the things that he didn't like, and he used the same tone as somebody that talks about foreign affairs from their armchair. I don't really like how that happened there. It's just not right, and it should probably stop. It doesn't really matter to or affect him at all. In the ring, Owen put Sid into a great-looking leg hold, and Owen was yelling, "I'll break his knee off! I'll snap it off!" And I fucking popped. When Owen was distracting the ref so Anvil could work on Sid, the Anvil looked like garbage. But that was crossing the line. That was too much for Kenny to handle. Shamrock got up and went after the Anvil, giving him a belly-to-belly on the floor, which the Anvil sold like garbage. And that was the roundabout way of getting to the finish. Owen gave Sid some great air on the choke slam, which gave Sid the pin and the win. This match was serviceable, I thought, maybe, but otherwise just unimportant. Kind of came out of nowhere. But between his start in the WWF as a referee and then this shit and then the woman defending thing, I'm wondering if they're maybe trying for a setup with Shamrock as like a straight-lace, fairness, justice babyface to maybe Marrow's woman abuser gimmick. Well, Joe, what did you think of all of this?
Yeah, you could be onto something there. As far as this match, I thought it was a typical Sid match where the opponent is working hard and Sid just sucks at selling and it's not that exciting. You know, the only thing that I took from this was Ken Shamrock's having these issues with members of the Hart Foundation, and they keep talking about this Canadian Stampede pay-per-view. And so it makes me think, okay, they're trying to build some sort of stable to go up against the Hart Foundation, and maybe Ken Shamrock is one of those pieces.
I think we're going to get a little bit further display of that at the end of the show.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I gathered from here. And the Anvil is just, man, he is... Talk about someone who's just riding coattails at this time.
Stu basically begged Vince McMahon to take him back right now, right?
Yeah. I don't want to discredit the stuff that he did in the original Hart Foundation with Bret, but man, this time period, it's just... He doesn't really fit in, but it's just kind of there and kind of works, I guess. But anytime he gets involved, it is ugly.
I'll start off by saying I still love these Hart Foundation biker leather jackets. They're still fucking sweet, even if Anvil is wearing one, you know. Joe, or Bartlett, I think, you stated Sid is going to be as good as his opponent. And, you know, thankfully, Owen Hart is in there with him, and he's able to at least get a pretty solid match. I mean, with Sid, it's never going to be a great match, but I thought Owen did what he could to get a serviceable match out of Sid. Shamrock on commentary, you know, sometimes he does all right, and then other times, like, he just kept on repeating himself over and over, like, well, they shouldn't be out here. This isn't right. They shouldn't be out there. They shouldn't be out there. And then finally he snaps and goes and attacks the Anvil, and Anvil does his best to make Shamrock look shitty. The match certainly could have been better, but putting Owen Hart in there with Sid, I think we ended up with something at least solid. You know, I didn't hate it.
Yeah, that's a great viewpoint to have on it. It's better than sitting here and saying, it's just not right, and it should probably stop.
It's not right. They shouldn't be out there. Shouldn't be out there.
I don't like it. All right. After that, commentary continued to hype that Austin versus Pillman match later on. I'm so fucking excited to see that at this point here. Just the hype had me on the edge of my seat, you know? As a build up to that, we got footage of Shotgun Saturday Night last week, and once again, the graphic advertising the matchup between Austin and Pillman up there on our screens. I almost reflexively threw up after that when we heard Sable's music play. Wow! And then I did throw up a little when I saw that was for Sable to be dancing around at the top of the ramp, advertising a t-shirt with Doc Hendricks doing that just shitty fucking club promoter thing over the house PA.
Gentlemen, would you please put your eyes up to the stage?
Come get a whiff. Hey, by the way, Sable has her own Titantron video now. That's progress, right? While she was doing her dancing around, the camera guy made sure to get the upskirt view and practically buried the camera in her tits at the start of that, and then again towards the end. But then...
Get up in there.
Once she got back up to the top of the entryway, Mark Marrow came out through the curtains to grab Sable and drag her backstage.
I feel a powerbomb coming on.
You know, it's so funny that they've completely flip-flopped on him now. Like, he started by rescuing her, you know, and then now this shit because he couldn't get over and just, anyway. Just when the thought of Mark Marrow was almost too much to bear, we transitioned to Jim Ross setting up the final chapter of his interview with Mankind. And let me tell you, JR did one hell of a job here, talking about how he'd been interviewing wrestlers for 20 years and had never felt so helpless as he did in the hands of Mankind. By God. And it wasn't just the words that he was giving us. We had a headshot camera angle on JR there, and facially, his expression, he was selling the living shit out of it. That took us into that final chapter of the interview, and it started with Mankind saying that every time he puts on the mandible claw, he's imagining that he's putting it on Vince McMahon. And he's thinking, why didn't you take me back when I was good? Fucking goosebumps on that. Mankind compares himself to Shawn Michaels, and the way that he did that was fucking amazing. Mankind wants others to feel his suffering, and he wants to cause that suffering because that's how he has a nice day. I loved when Jim was asking Mankind questions about Mankind's personal responsibility for the affairs in the ring there, and Mankind was thinking about it and playing with his scars. But that's when Mankind turned on Jimmy, first punching himself in the face for real, giving himself a contusion and a bruise there. You could see it purpling on the camera. My God. He's talking about pain there, and as Mankind got more worked up, he got closer and closer to JR, finally knocking JR's hat off, applying the mandible claw, taking Jimmy to the floor. And Jim sold the shit out of it, gasping and gargling and retching. It ended with Mankind backing away, saying he's going to need some help. And this segment ended with JR very seriously addressing his own professional responsibility while Rockabilly's stupid fucking entrance music played in the background. And that is where we will end this segment. This was by far my favorite installment of this interview series, not just because of Mankind, but because of Jim Ross. The way that he worked and sold in this was the icing on the cake. What a fucking professional, giving himself up to this. Joe, what did you have on more teasers about the mild man Mark Marrow here, but really this final installment of the Mankind interview?
Yeah, starting with the Sable stuff, couple things here. For a woman who has sex appeal like that, and that's what they're selling, she has no rhythm or dance moves whatsoever. Nope. As soon as she starts doing that, it takes away all of her sex appeal completely. Yep. And I'm surprised they're doing this overprotective Mark Marrow thing already. But I think it is good use of him during his injury, I guess. If they're, with Vince being obsessed with Sable, I guess it's a good way to kind of lead into that when he comes back. But the Mankind video is the highlight here. And my favorite part of this whole thing was the concern at the end by Mankind. He's going to need some help. The reason I love that is because I think that's such a genius move to protect that likability of Mankind that we've been building up.
It gives you a little sympathy for him because he seems insane.
Yes, because what he did here is very dastardly. But then he shows that concern. It's like, oh, well, now I feel bad for this guy, and I still like him, So I thought that was the best part of it, but I loved the stuff that he said about Shawn Michaels, too, saying that he would like to see Shawn Michaels end his career handing out change in an arcade. And why does he look the way he does and I look like death? I just loved a lot of those lines. Everything that Mankind said and did in this part of this video series was fantastic.
I'm not even going to really touch on the Sable Mark Marrow thing. It happened. I'm going to move on to the Mankind final installment because that's all that really mattered in this segment. And Bartlett, I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you noticed, but the very beginning, they show some footage of some of his death matches. And the first one they show is him covered in blood holding up that giant trophy. And that's the match that he won. It's the end of that tape we watched 100 times. So that stuck out to me for sure. All of these interviews have been good, but he really put it over the top in this one. JR starts bringing up about not feeling pain, and he starts punching himself. Do you not think I feel that? Those are iconic scenes that have been replayed in any wrestling fan's mind a million times. Mick did such a great job of showing a crazy person here. You could see the moment JR's questions just got a little bit too intimate for him. You could see Mankind got triggered and he just his eyes locked on JR. And from that point on, he was like a different man. He was insane. It's like he snapped and then putting the mandible claw on JR and then snapping out of it saying, he's going to need some help. Perfect ending to this video series. And then how do you follow that perfect ending with a fucking piece of trash, Honky Tonk Man, and Rockabilly coming out?
Music.
Fuck me sideways. What a way to ruin it.
The Rockabilly music right at the end.
Yep.
The perfect contrast of just good shit and bullshit. Speaking of, that took us into our next match. Rockabilly with the Honky Tonk Man defeats Bart Gunn by pinfall in 2 minutes and 52 seconds. And Ryan, Bart Gunn was a jobber of the week, wasn't he?
Bart Gunn was. He was our very first pay-per-view jobber of the week, getting the honors on our In Your House 13 Final Four pay-per-view.
Thank you for that. Well, that is almost overshadowed by this match. I was so excited to finally get this rematch. It had been keeping me up at night. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen between
brother versus brother.
Yeah. I mean, this is bigger than Owen and fucking Bret, you know?
Yeah, remember when Bart tried to break Billy's neck?
Yeah, exactly.
Frickin'. Break his frickin' neck.
Yeah.
I then... I realized while things were starting that Bart Gunn got the full jobber treatment again here at the start. He had 0 entrance. He barely got a mention from the ring announcer.
Well, Bart Gunn is our jobber of the week again.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding, of course.
Unbelievable. JR mentions that this is the first time they've been in the ring together since Billy Gunn broke his own neck selling that rope work. Months ago.
But now he's Rockabilly, you see?
Yeah.
So it's a different guy.
It's a result of the trauma, I guess. I also guess the Honky Tonk Man made this match happen for the purpose of closure for Rockabilly. He couldn't move on. I mean, that's what was holding back the gimmick. That's why he couldn't flourish as Rockabilly, because he needed fucking closure on Bart Gunn.
I knew it.
Bart gave that Howard Dean woo again before going back to jobbing. Rockabilly got his closure with a swinging neck breaker. Irony there, I thought. And that's it for the match. We can finally move on with our lives. Ryan, what'd you have on this?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, what the fuck could I have about this? It was 2 seconds long. It was stupid, made no sense, and I hated everyone involved.
Oh.
Well, not everyone. Bart's a good worker. I'll give him that. But a jobber, nevertheless.
Yeah.
And was definitely a jobber here.
Yeah, this was as bad as we all expected. So let's move on to that match that we've been just waiting for.
Yes.
All night.
Yes. Well, so that starts by going backstage. The camera was there trying to eavesdrop on the Hart Foundation, but was quickly slapped down. That was a nice piece of camera work. It really looked like the cameraman got dropped there to the concrete. We broke to commercial, came back to Brian Pillman coming down for his match against Steve Austin. But before that, we had to get a Super Soaker rewind to Superstars back in October of '96 when Austin Pillmanized Pillman's ankle. And that image is what took us into our final match of the night. Mankind defeats Brian Pillman by disqualification in 5 minutes. Steve Austin came out to a heavy pop, but then the Hart Foundation came out behind him and dismantled Austin, beating Austin down to a pulp there. But Mankind came out of nowhere, attacking first the Bulldog and then getting in the ring with Brian Pillman. Vince noted that the official was actually officiating Mankind and Pillman and says, "Well, I guess this is an official match." And that's all it takes, folks. Bait and switch.
No bait and switch. I've been promised.
These things just happen.
The official was none other than the master of bullshit himself, Earl Hebner.
No. The king of the screw jobs.
Completely ignoring the fact that none of this should be happening. Pillman gave Mankind a great-looking suplex on the entryway, and Mankind gave Pillman a great series of headbutts that increased in intensity. It looked great there in the corner. And these two were just all over each other in a desperate-looking knockdown, drag-out slobber knocker. Mankind gave Pillman a great kick to the face. That was followed up by the double-arm DDT. And when Mankind applied the mandible claw, that drew in the Hart Foundation, which in turn drew the DQ victory for Mankind. They started beating on Mankind there, which drew out Steve Austin limping down to try for some revenge. But then Ken Shamrock also running down and bypassing Austin into the ring, which is where things kind of started to get into what the fuck territory for me. Stone Cold, however, ended up giving Shamrock a stunner, followed by some energetic middle fingers. And when Austin was there falling out between the ropes, Austin gave Mankind a couple of middle fingers just for good measure, which I got a great chuckle out of. And we faded to black. So after the bait and switch that I knew would be happening, because, keep in mind, I see the match card before going into this so that I could make my notes accordingly, but I didn't know how they were going to pull it off. I knew it was going to wind up being Mankind, but they were leaning so heavily into Austin versus Pillman to the point of Austin coming out for the match.
Well, you see, you can't properly pull off a bait and switch if you don't do that.
Well, they've had some pretty lazy fucking bait and switches in the past, so I don't have much of a standard to go by here.
They've never pulled a bait and switch before in the past. I don't know what you're talking about.
Once they got things properly sorted out, though, I thought Mankind and Pillman gave us a great match, and somehow it felt both like old school and modern in the way that it was worked. And when we got to the finish, I got really worried that we were going to have a typical WWF clusterfuck and it would ruin it all, but Stone Cold saved it all by giving Shamrock the stunner. And in the end, I thought this was a great match and a great finish to the episode. Joe, what did you think of it?
There's more on this in the news later and why a lot of this is happening. But yeah, this did come off as very confusing at first. And seeing Mankind in there, again, I think, okay, once the end of this match happened, I thought, okay, maybe they're continuing to build that stable to go up against the Harts. So maybe Mankind is a part of that now.
Yeah.
Austin giving Shamrock the stunner was, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I'm sure it's part of the story as well. So again, this whole thing just seems like they're kind of building that story for their next pay-per-view in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bait and switch happened. They've been talking about this Pillman Stone Cold match for a couple weeks now. So it was a bit of a disappointment to not have it, but I thought they did a pretty good job of transitioning into the Mankind Brian Pillman match. And Bartlett, I agree. I thought they put together a really solid match. Unfortunately, the crowd seemed to be disappointed, though, as well, because, the moment they found out it wasn't Stone Cold and Pillman, they kind of sat down and stayed on their asses the rest of the night. And so that's unfortunate because I do think Mankind and Brian Pillman put on a pretty good match, even if Brian Pillman isn't at 100%, which I don't know if you guys noticed it, but did you guys see that one of Brian Pillman's boots is different than the other?
Yeah.
Yeah, one's like a normal wrestling boot. The other's a completely untied boot. And if you look down, you can see his ankle is just completely wrapped up.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not 100%, but they did a good audible here, as I think we're going to find out later that they had to pull. I don't know if I'm 100% correct on my timeline here, but is this going to be when Mankind starts to lobby Stone Cold to be his tag team partner?
No, I think, isn't that whenever he turns into Dude Love?
Well, yeah, but I don't think we're that far from that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I'm not sure, yeah.
Well, I mean, the only reason I think that is because right now Stone Cold is the tag team champ, and we don't know what the status of Shawn Michaels is, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I think there's an open. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Well, as I said, we faded to black, so let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you take that first?
I'm going to go a different route this week. I'm going to go with two highlights. I thought this show was really good, but two things really stood out. That was Farouk basically overhauling the Nation of Domination and specifically pointing out how useless Crush has been. And then also the Mankind mandible claw on Jim Ross in that final segment of the Mankind interview. I thought that was great. For my low light, I'm going to say just the way these shows are put together sometimes. In particular, this one. So the Farouk segment happened, and then we're going to break, and we're showing Mark Marrow and Sable. So I'm going to turn the channel to Nitro.
Yeah, immediately.
Then you get the amazing Mick Foley video, and you hear the fucking rockabilly music at the end. And again, I'm going to switch to Nitro. So that's my low light. Sometimes the way these shows are put together are just probably the reason why they're losing in the ratings.
My highlight, kind of two. The first highlight, Crush has been fired, highlight. And then again, Joe, just like you, this final Mick Foley interview, it's the most iconic of the four, and it is for a reason. My low light, I'm going to have to go with the European Championship match. It just was such a letdown, and then the ending just really soured it.
Yeah. So we're actually going to be 3 for 3 on our highlights in that we all three have the same double highlights. I had to go with the firing of Crush from the Nation of Domination, tied with the final chapter in the Mankind interview. We're differing on the low light there. My low light is the mild man Mark Marrow, officially back on our screens. Too soon.
Yeah.
It should have never happened. With that being said, I'm looking forward to hearing the news, especially after how we've seen that it kind of affected this episode. Joe, what do you have for contemporary news from on and around June 9th, 1997?
Well, I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were not on this episode of Raw.
Yes.
The reason for that is because of their huge backstage fight that everybody knows about, where Bret pulls out Shawn's hair and Shawn throws the clump of hair on the desk and says it's an unsafe working environment and left. So that happened right before this episode of Raw. So those guys were not on the show. I sent you guys the article, the Pulitzer Prize winning article that Dave Meltzer wrote. And he basically highlights the entire situation. Shawn Michaels, I put in air quotes, quit the WWF. He made some threats to go to WCW. Bret Hart, I'm not sure what happened on his end. There's not much there. I don't know if he just kind of said, I guess I better not work tonight or whatever. But yeah, that's where we are. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that or any thoughts on that very interesting article that Dave Meltzer wrote.
I don't have a ton to add, other than it does make some of the odd spots of this episode make a lot more sense. You know, the continuation of bringing Shamrock out for just about every segment, the stuff at the end with Mankind being shoehorned into this storyline with the Hart Foundation and Stone Cold, you know, all of that stuff just makes a little bit more sense after reading what transpired. But everyone kind of just acted like assholes, it seems.
Yeah.
You know, backstage, it's tough to really pick a side when you read the stories, because it was just childish shit, and these two guys couldn't work together and couldn't find any common ground for the betterment of the company. So it's sad, but it is what it is, as they say.
Yeah, speaking of things that are childish and hard as shit to deal with, I'd like to specifically mention Dave Meltzer's writing. Joe, you mentioned that you sent us the article that you're referencing here for this episode, and I thought I had at least 3 strokes reading it, which is 2 more strokes than there are appropriate punctuations in all of that. I would just like to say that I've decided that Dave Meltzer's style could be classified as typewriter diarrhea, and that I would like the Wrasslin Raw board of directors to know that I'm putting in for a salary increase for one Joseph Gimateo for the sacrifices, the ongoing sacrifices that he puts out for this podcast in dealing with that absolute garbage bullshit. Just terrible, terrible fucking writing. I don't know how you do it week in and week out, Joe.
Well, $9.99 a month. It's worth every penny.
I just want to note that I did crunch that article through ChatGPT, and it spit out a much more coherent article. So if you want to keep your sanity, churn it through ChatGPT once, and you might not want to put a bullet in your head when you're done.
You just have to imagine your own punctuation while you're reading it, I guess. So a couple things that happened here. Steve Austin tweaked his knee at the pay-per-view last night, so he was not going to have that match with Brian Pillman.
Okay.
And Mankind ended up having the match with Brian Pillman, but that was originally going to be Shawn Michaels, so they kind of had to rewrite some things on this show due to that little backstage fight.
Huh. Just so that I have it right, originally it was supposed to be Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Brian Pillman, but Austin gets his knee tweaked, meaning that Shawn Michaels was going to sub in, but then Shawn gets in the fight with Bret, so Mankind has to sub in for the sub in.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yep. So a couple other comments from Dave Meltzer on tonight's show. He thought the Bulldog versus Goldust match was a total dud with a finish that people booed in the crowd. He said the RVD Flash Funk match was a good but short match. And he just said overall this was a good show, especially under the circumstances with Bret and Shawn. Diana Smith won Mrs. Calgary beauty pageant on June 8th with that troubled look.
And that stew jaw.
Yeah. Stone Cold Steve Austin has not only tweaked his knee, he's also dealing with a neck injury that has been diagnosed as severe erosion of his neck vertebrae.
Ugh.
Maybe if we just break that neck, maybe it'll set it right.
Yeah. He did get a second opinion who said he did not need surgery and that he could continue to work, but he will have to deal with the pain. So there's really not much they can do there, according to that doctor. Do you guys remember the singer John Tesh?
Yes.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, he was kind of like a easy listening type of...
Wasn't he on Entertainment Tonight with...
Yes.
Okay.
Mary Hart.
Yeah, that's it.
So John Tesh at this time, 1997, has an interesting contract demand in his contracts when he does a concert. He tells promoters that they must give him a WWF action figure in the dressing room before the show. John Tesh has said... John Tesh has said that his tour director came up with this idea to make sure the promoters read every line in his contract.
Yeah, I've heard
and that John Tesh is not a wrestling fan.
They went out of their way to point that out.
It's like the old brown M&M thing that you hear.
Right.
And then John Tesh got a Crush action figure with bone-crunching action and decided to quit.
Show.
And took his own life.
he retired. And that is all this week.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most mesmerizing Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on June 16th, 1997, with matches featuring the new Blackjacks, Chris Candido, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.